Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third leg of the Governor's 2023 Workforce Summit. Today we are on beautiful St. John, and we have a great day in store for you. First, let me introduce our guests who are up on stage. Of course, the Honorable Albert Bryan, Jr., our great governor here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We're also joined on stage by the Honorable Gary Molloy, Commissioner of the Virgin Islands Department of Labor. Also, Chairman of the Workforce Development Board, Mr. Michael Carty. And Assistant Commissioner Legal Counsel for the Department of Labor, Nesha Christian-Hendrickson. We have spent the last couple of days here in the territory, first on St. Croix, then St. Thomas, discussing amongst workshops and experts the theme of this year's event, which was Seize the Moment, Take Charge of Your Tomorrow. I think we can all agree, for those of us who've been to all the events, that we have learned a lot, we have explored a lot, and I think people have walked out of it feeling like they have a better idea of what to do. Whether you're a launch and learn person or somebody who likes to stand back, watch for a while, and then take action. And I think that's the message that you'll hear from our speakers today. We've got some other speakers who'll be coming up in a little while. We are streaming live on the Government House Facebook page, so if you are watching from home, hello. And if you're in the audience and you'd like to share that information with friends or family, please do so. The more audience, the better. We'd like to kick things off today with the discussion, which will be led by Governor Bryan. So I would like to turn things over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mike, and welcome everybody. We're in St. John, and you know, it's funny. I always pay attention to the tapestry of each island, and for what's going on right now in St. John, it's just like construction. You get on the dock, construction, big trucks pulling in. You have condos being built, homes being built. New infrastructure being put in everywhere you look. So it's kind of nice that we finish off in St. John every year. We talk about what we talked, all the different topics we had in St. Thomas and St. Croix, and we touch a little bit on what's going on in St. John. But this has been an awesome week, hasn't it? I mean, like what are the recurring themes that you heard this week that really resonated with you?
Well, I'll kick it off. And one of the things that really resonated with me is the interest that everybody has. You know, everybody has, a problem that they're trying to solve. Everybody has issues that they want to overcome. And I think having these summits helps them come to the table with folks that may be able to share either experiences or advice to then get them over those hurdles. But the one thing that I do notice is some of us feel we need to be perfect to share those stories, right? We go through so much in life, but then we don't share it with anybody else. Right. I personally don't want anybody who perfect giving me advice because if you had an easy road, I mean, you can't really guide me through the bumps that I might face, So we got to realize that no matter what your struggle is, you have triumphed somehow, and then you should share it with somebody else. And I think the summit gives a platform to do that, but we also got to do it within the community.
It's funny you say that because in a lot of places, like a lot of spaces in the islands, people think talking about your success is boasting. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about how you did something, people think you're trying to big up yourself, like we say, but it's not. And I think when you find something that works for you, you should share it. It's not boasting, it's sharing of information that could enrich people. And on the contrary, people feel a little nervous about that because they don't want to be judged. And they don't want to be extinguished with that. So that's an interesting tidbit that you have, that people don't think their story is valid or they have to be. And none of us have perfect stories. Right. It is a struggle. But that's the other thing I think that you hit on. It is a struggle. Mm-hmm. Like you didn't, buy a lottery ticket one time and miraculously end up here. Lottery seems to be my theme for the week. I'm like $1.73 billion short of a life experience, but it takes work and the ambition that's there. You see it in our young people. Who you was telling me the young lady taking notes in the dark during these conferences. Well, what did you get, Commissioner?
Well, I hope you don't think that I was boasting about the unemployment insurance, the rate.
No, we pounded it.
We pounded it. Was that right? So what we're doing is you know, for me, I found that a lot of individuals came to shop for what works for them. You know, there was a lot of information, and there's a lot of confusion in some cases as to what the actual workforce system is or what it's trying to accomplish. You know, so when we talked about the unemployment rate being at 3.3% for the territory and 3.1% St. Thomas, St. John, and you still hear a lot of employers saying, I need employees, and a lot of job seekers saying, I can't find work. You know, several people came up to me, you know, and said, I haven't been able to find a job for over a year. I've been looking. So what I got out of it is that we were able to bring a lot of information to close the gap, that disconnect, and people came and shopped for what worked. They made the connections, and a lot of matches took place, you know, over the past 2 days.
It's like a decoder ring. I remember when I was a young commissioner, I went in emphasis on young.
Am I an old commissioner?
Yeah, this is your second term now. This is your second term. You're seasoned. We went to see Job Corps. I visited several Job Corps nationwide and spoke to students in Job Corps. And I would never forget this young lady. She was like, you know, I learned so much in my first month here. She says, a resume. Who would have known? A resume. I never even thought about a resume until I got here and knew I needed one for a job. So as you get, I wrote a piece one time. It's called Remembering Where You Came From. And the piece was about how as you get older and as you get more successful, you kind of think what you know is common sense. And when you live in a middle-class household and both parents are working, both parents are professionals, and kids have an opportunity to interact with them all the time, they kind of know by happenstance because it happens every day in their household. But there are a lot of people that grow up in homes where that is not common. I mean, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. When I was in high school, you know, I was trying to go to college. You know, I brought home all those financial aid forms to my mom, and she looked at me like I was nuts. Like, what do you want me to do with these things? I was like, don't worry, call the school. They're going to help you fill them out. And a lot of that work I had to do myself as a student. And my parents were, I mean, they were regular folks, I mean, but they did well in their lives. None of them went to college. The same thing is happening in our workforce today. And we have to figure out ways to decode it for people, because we you know, if you've been looking, I'm talking to you at home, wherever you are, if you've been looking for a job for a year, something is wrong with you. And it doesn't mean something is wrong with you, it's your fault. It could be something you're doing. This week I wanted to comment on somebody, like, I remember I was talking in my speech about how I wish employers could tell people what they're doing wrong. I had a friend, she interviewed a girl, great resume. She said, but she had on 10 bangles, and she kept talking with her hand. Chicka clink, 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 chicka clink, clink, clink. Every time she reached her hand. She said it was so distracting. I didn't hear anything she said. You know? Sometimes it's the smallest little thing. The little marijuana earring in your ear, you know? The fact that you just don't put together right. It just doesn't make sense. Gaps in your resume. Those are the kind of things that employer look like. As a job seeker, you wouldn't seek. So figuring out the decoder ring, and I think we have to do now some what do you say, more in-depth training, more so assistance to people who are getting locked out of the workforce. Nesha?
So a couple things. The first is that there's a lot of talent, and there's a lot of promise. So one of the things that I realized in my previous life is that, you know, some people don't have anyone in their household who has ever had a job, 2 or 3 generations back as a public defender. So you
say that again, because I think people need to hear that, because we take it for granted. I mean, like, well, everybody know that, you know.
Right. So 2, 3 generations back. So that means your grandparents never worked, your mother never worked, and here you are trying to get into the workforce, and you don't have a model. So if I have a model, then I can then teach it to other people, and I can understand if I wake up in the morning and I don't want to go to work, I still got to go. Some people don't have as a model.
Right.
So giving them the exposure, giving them the opportunity. So I was so thrilled to see, again, that we had young people who came to the summit so they could interact with people. Not everybody gets a chance to rub elbows and to talk to people who are actually doing the work. So, but there's a lot of promise in the community. And so giving us an opportunity to take advantage of that and to learn about what's out there. Oftentimes we hear there's no programs, there's no training. We just trained over 811 people, and people just don't know about it. So I really love the summit because it gives us a chance to really talk to people one-on-one and to access the talents in the community. You don't get a chance to talk to the CEO of VIA, I mean, day to day, and you might know that they exist, but you don't get to talk to people who are in major companies. So that's some of the things that I noticed.
You know, one of the things that the impact of COVID, and people say, oh yeah, I was talking about COVID. But the impact of COVID in our community, the one thing that it did is that it took away personal interaction on a professional level, right? Because we used to have a lot of different summits that you were going to. We go to Sugar Bay, we go to the Reef, we out at DV. I mean, we did different kinds of summit, meeting people, talking about ideas. But that stopped for 2.5 years. And now, like, it's just starting to pick up, and we've lost how much is really gained when you have those interactions with the public and you're able to engage, because at the end of the day, it is who you know. So I always try to hook up with the young people, partly because I think I'm young too, and try to figure out, like, who are your friends? Who do you know? And there's some amazing young people. Now I want to ask you a question. Do you think that our workforce is afraid and intimidated of moving up, of escalating, of upskilling?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's absolutely the case. You know, many times they see us here on this panel, they see us in the suits or the jackets. They don't realize that this is just a byproduct of the struggles or the path that we took. Right. And they say, well, you know what, looking at that end result, I can't do that. And they're intimidated to even try. So who they gravitate towards are the folks that closest to them, in the same neighborhoods that they're in the same households or in the same apartment building. And that's who is their circle of trust. They don't really trust us because we don't have enough forums or platforms to show that we're approachable.
Right.
You know, that's one thing that these summits also do, is they make us approachable to talk, have that dialogue, and show them, look, we come from the same, similar, and sometimes worse backgrounds. Absolutely. You know, I shared a story, yesterday, as far as, at the age of 25, I built one of the largest networks in the world. Things that PhDs thought wasn't going to work. However, I didn't say that to say that I am that smart or I am smarter than them. I say that because I wasn't educated so much to say I gave myself reasons why it couldn't work.
Right.
I said, look, this has to work. It has to be this result because that was my chance. So I wasn't looking at all the reasons it shouldn't work. I was just looking at the result that it's supposed to. And a lot of our people have the advantage. They ain't educated or overeducated to the point of saying, look, it can't work for these reasons. So that's real green field for us to really grow and harness them with the right motivation to move forward.
But it's a kind of like code switch. You know what code switch is, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
So when I was in college, I would be with my friends and stuff, and I'd be speaking like this. We're in Ohio. My grandmother would call. I'd be like, "Oh God, okay, and all of a sudden I just feel all these eyes on me, and I'd be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Why don't you speak like that when you talk to us?" I said, "First of all, understand what he's saying."
That's right.
Huh? Exactly. There used to be, I don't know how much it is now, this pervasive thing about selling out. Mm-hmm. You can't be in the same friends, same family, same community, same kind, and expect to get different results.
That's right.
So if you want to upskill or get into something new, it's gonna take getting uncomfortable. And you've been uncomfortable. You talked about the PhD. You're with this guy who has all these patents, and you're going up the hill, and he asks you what college you went to and what school you went to.
Yeah, he asked me why I study, so I said CHS. So it just came out,
Yeah.
But many times, those types of interactions probably would have never happened if I didn't apply myself. And in that moment, as I thought back over the years after, I realized, well, look, if I could have done this, something that these folks thought was impossible, I realized that, I could train a lot of individuals. You know, and every step that I took is people from the different communities that I lived, I brought along with me. Wrong the Field, Oswald Harris Court, Corwin Terrace. I mean, that's my staff. And if you talk to them now, they are far more trained and qualified than a lot of folks who have degrees doing it. Just because I took a different approach to it, I kind of found that uncommon ability that I had, and I was able to distill it to say, you know what, this is how we could learn it, and this is how we could see it.
You know, but I also think you touch on a lot, and I think what's happening that we need to really pay attention to is the soft skills. That there's nothing soft about those skills, as I mentioned in the past, because they're life skills. And what some of the things that help you move forward is the fact that there's certain things that you didn't give up on yourself. You had a certain drive that allowed you to follow that particular passion. And so there's a lot that's happening that I get from employers when we have that dialogue and they're talking about, you know, you helped me with this match, but that match is like, it's not working. Right. You know, and when you look at what's happening, it's not that our people, we gotta get the message that it's not okay it's one thing to be confident, it's the next thing to be rude. And it's the next thing to understand. So when I understand you by saying code switching, we have to understand the environment that we're going into. When we cross that threshold, or when we put on these ties, or put on these pins, I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Labor. Right. So you have to understand that the role that you want to get to, there's a way to get there. But at the same point, the success that you've seen, it doesn't come without paying your dues. You have to pay your dues, and you've got to make sure that you are true to yourself. You understand your strengths and weaknesses. And I often talk to young people about doing a SWOT analysis on yourself. You know, we talk about a SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses. You look at what those obstacles would be and then whatever threats would be, because you need to understand yourself, your strengths and your limitations, so that, one, you don't oversell yourself. Two, you don't put yourself in a situation where, you know, that you got to be uncomfortable, but at the same point, you still have to be able to perform some sort of outcome.
And I'd like to add to that as well, and for us up here and even for the crowd, those soft skills that we talk about, right, it's very important, but we have to look at the why. A lot of our folks, is, you know, myself included initially, how we act, sometimes the adaptations we have to take on based on the environment that we are around. Mm-hmm. So it's like we could look at it as they acting like how they should.
I don't got to market you. You got to say how we got to act according to the adaptation.
But think about it, and you
Amen.
See, it's hard to shed those things when that's how you.
But give them an example of that. Give them an example.
So for instance, if I live in a housing community, or if I live in Trailer City or any place in the West, I cannot talk proper with those folks on the turf. That's just, you know, and I ain't choosing to say do it. It's just coming naturally. Right. And they expecting me to be a certain way, act a certain way, respond a certain way. And I kind of have to, because I have to pay attention to everything 360 around me in my environment all the time.
But you know what's interesting about that? It's so interesting because young people, I realize, they used to say a thing, keeping it real, right? A lot of young people don't have the opportunities to go to different genres and code switch. So you can't keep it real in church, you know? And when you go to church, you dress a certain way, you act a certain way. And then when you go to school, you're there a certain way. Nowadays, you kind of can do anything you want. It's like my daughter come up one day and we were going to church, she had on some short pants. And I was like, where you going? She was like, to church. She was like, I was like, in that, no, that's not how we do it. And she's like, well, everybody in church got on short pants. Yeah, but not we.
Not everybody. We're not everybody.
You go put on a dress.
Yeah,
and,
not everybody.
But that training is invaluable.
Yes.
And you don't think about it. I watched her go to church one time behind her mother, the two of them. Mm-hmm. And their mother sat with a little pocketbook. You know, when the kids, they always have a little pocketbook. And they watch the mother sit down, she crossed her legs, they crossed her legs, they pick up a hymnal, she pick up the hymnal. But it's all mimicking. Yes. Now, when you don't have anybody to mimic,
you can't do it,
it's a trouble. So if you're out there, I love that SWOT analysis. But you need to connect with somebody who can actually tell you what those weaknesses are.
But that's the challenge, right? That a lot of times people don't hold each other accountable. So
Right.
I have friends that will tell me you're messing up.
I do too, unfortunately. Yeah. I'm trying to get rid of them. But, you know, they keep saying like, nah, dude, that ain't working out. What were you thinking?
So you're most similar to the 5 people you're closest to,
Right.
right? So if the 5 people you're closest to are not progressing, they're not challenging you, they're not going anywhere, you're going to mirror them, and you're going to stay where you are, unless you really push. So
Say
that's
that
hard.
again. I want people to get that. Like, if the 5
The
people.
5 people.
No, if you don't want to go away, you're cool. Stay where you're at.
So the
But
5 people you're most closest to. If you look at them and you see they're not going anywhere, they're not doing anything, you're going to be like them. But if you look around and you have people who stretch you, who push you, who say, look, I really got you got to do better.
Yeah.
Then you'll be able to make, I had a conversation with my best friend yesterday. She has a big presentation today. Where she is, don't have any power. She's not here. And she had a choice. Pay for a hotel to get the presentation done or stay in the house in the darkness. She paying for a hotel.
Right.
You got to make choices if you want to make yourself move forward.
I mean, that's so key. I have a group of friends. I call them the obsessive compulsive competitive disorder group. We compete in everything. It's like, who can catch the biggest fish? Who could go the fastest on a bike? Who could climb the highest mountain? Who could have the greatest adventure? But it keeps you on your toes. And it's a healthy competition. Right. You don't always have to win. People have different stakes. But what do you think people are afraid of in terms of escalating and taking more responsibility in the workplace?
They are afraid of being successful. They're afraid of people saying, you're not my friend anymore, you're not in my group. And they're afraid of opportunity.
This need to be recorded. It's being recorded. That was one of the toughest lessons I had to learn. People are afraid to be successful because why?
Well, first of all, it's more work.
Yeah.
But work is good. But it's opportunity too. You're not going to have the same friend group. You're not going to have the same challenges. You're not going to have the same bills. It's going to be different. Right. So number one. Number two, and we have this thing in the territory that I'm hoping we're starting to shed, that they feel like people can't make so much money. But they're happy to help Jeff Bezos make his money. So it's strange because it's like, they say a certain amount of money, $100,000. If you look at the world, that's not a lot of money. It may be a lot of money here, but we want to get everybody to that level. We want to push everybody up.
That's self-value and self-worth. And I could tell you, I suffer from it, right? The first time I had a job opportunity and a friend of mine came in and said, listen, when they ask you how much you want, you tell them $125,000. I could not stop laughing. I was like, are you crazy? I'm not telling those people that. Like, what could I possibly do for $125,000? And there's a thing, you can look it up, it's called imposter syndrome.
Yes.
That a lot of us suffer from, that, you're not worthy and you didn't earn it and you didn't deserve it. We have to get over that. And money is an object, it's just a number there, but it's the value that's being created. I mean, when you think about, people go to quarterbacks, professional athletes, $40 million a year, right? How much the owner of the team making if he could pay him $40 million? It's all relative. But that I think the hardest thing, I said in my success story, the hardest thing is leaving people behind. And it's not leaving people behind like you don't care about them, you don't love them, but like right now, I need to focus on some other things. And you're not coming on this train with me. And I'm a moving train, so you can't come. Have you had experiences like that on your success?
Yeah, by far. During the summit, I talked about the different stages that you go through. When you're on the path to success, for a while you're going to drift, try and figure out how you do whatever it is you're trying to do. Then when you find a path, that's when you have to go at it alone. Because, as much as you try, you're going to try to bring folks along with you, but they ain't seeing it the same as you're seeing it. They maybe just saying their time. And then after you go at it alone, then you transition to going at it together, finding like-minded folks, finding similar people to harness the energy. But many times you have more of the folks who still drifting that are around you, that you really earnestly want to help, but they just ain't seeing it in the same way. And it comes to that imposter syndrome. I mean, you condition from a long time, from early in life, to feel like there's only one path that you could take.
Absolutely.
So even though when you're starting to find success, you still feel like you don't deserve it. You still feel like you ain't qualified for this success, even though you're good at it. I mentioned it yesterday. We was doing $1 million contract, and I still felt ashamed because I ain't had a degree. When my mother heard I was doing business, the first thing she said, well, you think you're going to be able to save enough money to go back to college? So that conditioning isn't just me. That conditioning goes back to the parents, everybody that are around, and that's the environment they're in. So despite how far I was going, I was still thinking something was missing.
And I mean, those are just such important things for people to hold on because, I feel for people in the Virgin Islands, young people especially, because sometimes it's hard to find your crowd because you just don't fit in, right? And it's not because we don't have a lot of progressive people. It's just that we're so small and it's hard to find. And we intimidated by one another. When I was a younger man, we founded something called Generation Now. And one of the reasons we founded it was we knew all these people in the community is like, you know that dude? Yeah, man, he from Grove. He got a degree in thing and he does do this here. He mother is this person. But you pass him every day in the street and you don't say hello. How many people do that? Like, like people's life story, but you don't say hello to them because you've never actually met and you feel awkward going up to the person and saying, hi, right? Yeah. And we formed this organization because you only know what people to talk about. That's not that person. There's so much more to people than what people talk about them.
Way more.
And having that it's an asset for the Virgin Islands because the more we know about one another, the more we can deploy those talents. So we need to have more organizations that allow people and more events that allow people to come together, and people need to stop being afraid of one another. 90% of us are really, really nice people. The other 10%, that's a But let's switch a minute. Technology, amazing things are going on in the world. How do you think that went over in the summit and from what you heard feedback?
Oh, man, I think everybody excited about what's to come. Some people are a little afraid, but everybody's excited about what technology will promise for the future, right? But I think a lot of our folks need to also not be intimidated by it. So you have technology coming to make things more efficient. But then you're also hearing that message, you have technology coming to take away the job.
You were making it frightful, though. I can tell you.
He
was talking about, listen, the AI is coming in your house. It's going to know what you're going to do before you do it. It's going to know what to predict. It'll be like, what's that thing with it? The Minority Report. You just wake up one morning and the police, they're locking you up like the AI said you're going to commit a crime today.
Or iRobot, huh?
Correct. And you see, that's where things eventually will get to. I mean, it's being restrained.
That's good news.
Yeah, it's being kind of tempered and restrained now, right? But is it possible? Absolutely.
We got messaging going on so strong. When I go to the States, I call it living in the TV. Because you see people, they all act like a certain character. You got the grunge folk, you got the yuppies, you got the young mothers, you got the feminists, you got the crazy wacko Trump people. Everybody have their little group. They dress alike, they buy the same cars, they all have the Lululemon things on, all them walk around.
Yes.
Y'all know what Lululemon is, huh?
Of course.
It's already there, but it's going to get worse.
Correct, it's already there. But look, what platforms are they using to connect? So those groups are using the same technology to further their culture, their type of thinking, using these platforms. Which are you selecting it because that's what you like, or you selecting it because that's what you see now all the time?
But we were having a discussion this morning about that because the impact of the summit, and I was in a session with GeoSoul, and that helped me to relax a little bit because they reminded us that we've been using AI all the time.
Yes.
How many of you use GPS to get here? Yeah. So, so AI has been here all the time, and it's always been a tool. And as long as we keep the perspective that it is a tool, now we know that it's going to replace some jobs, especially some of the mundane jobs. And of course, in education, we're going to have to start making sure that people are doing their own work, because you're going to have ChatGPT helping you to summarize and edit, but at this stage,
is what you learn, though, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you think the education system is adjusting to that? I mean, because I guess at one time, caveman school, they used to teach you how to bust rocks, and then think about it, through history, right? So now we have. How is our education system going to respond to a system where you don't need to know all of that stuff anymore? It just comes automatically.
They're going to test you on problem solving.
You what?
It's going to test you on problem solving.
So you got to be a problem solver.
Yeah, it's
You
not
think
gonna-
we're doing that right now, though? I mean, like,
We're doing it to a certain degree. There's more classes that are having experiential learning. Like, for example, I know that there's a school that's doing IB as a method that teaches you in programs and projects instead of just assignments.
Rote.
So, because they're moving away from rote. I can Google rote. I don't need that.
Right.
So the next step is going to be, how do we problem solve? How do we make the connections between people? How do we learn to be more responsive? A robot can't read body language, right? Not yet.
yet.
Yes, it can.
There is.
You think that you think that AI will be in a dog girl like you and I watch it.
Think about it, right? So it can't read body language, but there is something called gait technology, right?
Okay.
Everybody has a gait, meaning how they walk, how they posture, and it's unique to everybody. So that's technically reading body language.
Right.
And do you know when that was first introduced to the public? It wasn't even like Department of Defense. It was Xbox Connect. That's one of the most advanced gait technology
Right.
recognition
Yeah, I'm
systems.
very
out there.
familiar with the
So
Xbox.
and that's like 10 years ago. That's like 10 years ago, right?
Right.
So imagine where it's at right now. So we may say it can't do that or won't be able to do that, but these things already exist today.
But the challenge to me is the bias, right? Because somebody's programming the program.
Correct, and that's what one of the biggest biases that they had with facial recognition early on was the mischaracterization and recognition of folks with darker skins.
Right.
Reason being because the folks that was training it are not us.
Right.
And that's just for facial recognition. What about, you mentioned GPS, right? What happens when the GPS decides that you shouldn't drive through this area because of whatever it picked up data-wise in this area?
Right.
What happens to the businesses, the schools, the restaurants that were in that area that GPS decided that you shouldn't drive through? All that traffic is gone.
Hey, I wonder sometimes because Waze be taking me in some neighborhoods. In the States. I feel like maybe we need to find a new way. But it's already happening.
Yeah.
Right. Been happening.
I mean,
Been
Yelp,
happening.
there'll be restaurants right next to you
Yeah.
that Yelp
Never
won't mention because they're not paying.
Yeah.
You know?
But-
I think, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that the thing that's also a challenge is that the misinformation. So, for example, I hadn't really got into the ChatGPT train yet because there was a situation where a lawyer used it, got wrong information because ChatGPT made up cases. They submitted it to the court and then got sanctioned.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, oh no, it's not gonna lead me astray. But so there's things about misinformation, as we know in the last couple of years with the pandemic, a lot of misinformation happened. So making sure that a human can choose which information is correct, but the machine may not be able to just yet.
And then there's bleeding edge, there's cutting edge, and there's bleeding edge, right?
Yes.
So
What's bleeding edge?
Well,
Bleeding average is like, okay, has not been done before. There's no standards set for it yet. Cutting edge is like they just set the standards and you adopted it quickly.
I like bleeding edge.
so
I like that.
so he bleeding a lot.
Yeah. But when you talk about it, and coming in this morning, I was thinking about it, driving to the ferry, about how do you get ahead? Is that you leverage cutting edge, right?
Right.
You get ahead of the curve. I remember, when Lotus had first come out and Excel was just a baby. Nobody knew about it. I was at work and I organized this file for my boss and printed it out and brought it to him. And he was so impressed. He's like, how did you do this? It must have taken you days to get this done. And I was like, well, I was working really hard on it. He was like, yeah, but I want to see this not in order by month. I want to see it in order because I was doing a report on cars by license plate number and departments. He's like, how long is that going to take you? I was like, if I go home now, I might have it done by next week. But I just got to dedicate all my time to it. Now you laugh, right? But that's leveraging technology. That's cutting edge. People are already doing it, sometimes in the wrong way, like you pointed out. You get the wrong thing. What are the kinds of technology and assets do you think that are coming out now that need to be leveraged in that way for people to move ahead?
Well, first, I think we got to look at technology, not just for tech's sake, but we have to solve problems. And then the technology will develop and evolve to say, we will find the tech to solve the problem that we pick. We just have to pick the right problem. So we can't say we're going to do cutting edge tech. Now, we have to have a cutting edge problem to then marry to tech. What is it that folks ain't paying attention to? What is a controversial topic that people just ain't touching that we could probably approach and say, you know what, we have the tech, we have the people, let's be creative and solve it. Then the tech will evolve. So we got to look at it as find these problems, pick one. Like yesterday we was discussing stem cells. Stem cells is a controversial thing across the U.S., but that's cutting edge health. How can we now be more policy prone or policy attractive for stem cell research and apply it to tech so that more people could take advantage of it here?
But it's just like, and it's you. I guess as you get older, you notice and you notice patterns. You could tell young people. When I was a young feller, there was a Bougainvillea clinic. People used to fly into Tortola to get plastic surgery. Now you get plastic surgery to like your general practitioner.
Yeah.
Like I went to some place where they could actually melt the fat off of your body in like
Yes.
2 hours.
Yes.
I'm serious. So, I'm thinking about trying this. But more and more, a lot of these things are becoming mainstream. And in the Virgin Islands, I think we have small problems. But technology creates problems too. One of the things that, in terms of adaptation here, that I think a lot of job seekers have not gotten used to, is that the AI is in the job application search. So when you submit a resume, if you could be the best auto mechanic in the world, if you don't have those certifications,
You're not gonna get caught.
the computer automatically eliminates you. I think that's happened for us in government.
True, and that's true because you're still basing AI on the content somebody produces, right?
Right.
But what if we look at the next stage that will come? What if we look at AI that's on your wrist, in your hands, and it knows that you're a great mechanic because it's clocking X amount of hours that you're working on that car. Now, you didn't put that on a resume, but now it knows that and it matched you with a job that you were uniquely qualified for. Wow. So that's where it will start to help.
So what you just told me is like poor people are going to be more disadvantaged because they're not going to be able to buy that watch or you'll be able to have that to order to be able to do and get into these things. This is why the human interaction piece is so important, to go out and meet people and connect, talk to people. And even on LinkedIn, I mean, we have a lot of tools. Like I never really took a serious look at LinkedIn, but I have a friend that really leverages that tool. It's a good place to figure out that you did something nice today or what you ate or whatever. But as a employment tool, it is a very powerful networking tool.
It is, and it's already a part, excuse me, it's a part of what Vital and Equus has as a part of the portfolio. So, and just to continue the discussion, the bandwidth discussion that you had on your panel yesterday was very important because, I don't know, how is the bandwidth on St. John? I know that at one point, there was an issue with the bandwidth on St. John. So from us, for the businesses that operate here, that need to make sure that they have reliable bandwidth, is there anything that we could need to do to make sure that's improved?
Well, I'll say this from an industry perspective, things are changing rapidly. Like right now, we putting fiber optics every place. Fiber optics is commonplace to us now. When, 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. It's going everywhere. However, are we 10 years behind? I would say yeah. Because right now you have low orbiting satellites that delivering internet to all parts of the globe. So that is going to make delivering internet and the reliability of internet far more accessible to everybody. Because now you have a space race happening. Nobody ain't, rushing to trench and, do underground fiber anymore. A lot of those paths have been laid. And they ain't trying to do it in the developing countries because that's too expensive. So now those launching those satellites are the ones that are the first adapters or the pioneers to capitalize on it. So you have Starlink, you have Amazon doing it, you have OneWeb that went bankrupt but then was bought out by a bunch of companies because they saw the potential. So I don't think it's anything. Bandwidth will no longer be an issue. In 5 years, that ain't even an issue anymore. What will be the issue is folks utilizing it to be creative and giving them the problems to solve. We have to solve the problem.
I'm always concerned about that, and that's why we made this big push to have free Wi-Fi in so many places. It's a president concern as well. Now we're only trying to get 5; he's trying to get 100, because it is becoming more and more challenging and. People don't realize, and you need to do this if you haven't done this, take a real inventory of how much you spend on technology and entertainment.
A lot.
And I did it. It was like $6,000 a year, and you don't realize it because my mother, God rest her soul, She used to complain about her $32 Vitelco bill every month. $32, you know, and I guess it was a lot of money back then, especially with 5 kids. But now you have a cell phone, your kid have a cell phone, you got a mobile laptop device that's connected to, you're paying for internet in your house, you're paying for cable, and God knows what else you're paying for. And then you have all the little $10, $5, $6, Netflix, Hulu.
Yeah.
And it adds up.
It does.
Ain't $5 and $6 a month. Netflix and Hulu.
Yeah, it's $22 and so.
So when you take that inventory, you realize like how your money is being spent. And for some people, that's a lot of money. We're trying to reduce that expense.
Right.
Energy is a huge issue for me now. I mean, it's not a popular subject, but WAPA, right? In everything we do is directed towards making the Virgin Islands more affordable and making people more powerful in terms of their economic power, their social and their mental power. And fixing a light bill will bring so much change to the Virgin Islands if we could get our lights down. And I went to the White House and I said, speaking to 2 White House staffers, if the president thinks the United States has an energy crisis and your light bill is 13 cents per kilowatt, what is my situation in the Virgin Islands? That should be a state of a national emergency for them. But bringing that to spin, what do you think could be the future of the Virgin Islands? There's a lot of discussion about making things. Is our future based in light manufacturing? Can we bring intellectual property? Is it finance? It'll always be tourism, but where is that nexus for us in the next phase of the Virgin Islands economy?
Well, I'll kick that off. And some of the industries that we do have to pay attention to, we don't generally talk about when we're talking about tech. If we look at the advances that we've seen over the past 30 years in tech, all of them circle around just communications. You know, sending a message, receiving a message, typing an email, etc., right? But we're missing the bigger game changers. Health,
Yes.
finance,
Yes.
and also energy.
Yes.
Those are where you will find not the next billionaires, but the next trillionaires. And those are the problems that we do need to solve, but it's hard to do. And those are the cutting edge things we need to approach. But one thing that I do see as another tech advantage we could focus on is building. Like right now we're building and we have so much construction going. I don't hear a lot about new methods of building happening. We're just kind of taking the same old time frames and methods of doing building. What else is out there? Are there new blocks? Are there new building methods? Is there a 3D
panels.
printed building? All these different things is how, suppose we could cut the time in half.
AI.
AI.
The solar panels.
The solar panels, exactly. Suppose there ain't no solar panels no more. Suppose we just roll it out across the roof.
Right.
The other thing I think that you hit on, and I always think about for us, is when you go to small island nations in the South Pacific, they don't live in houses as big as us.
Right.
They don't drive cars as big as us.
Right.
The way that what they spend their money on is different. So there's a constant scream in our community about how expensive it is to live here. Yet every other car is a 4-wheel drive gas guzzler. People have homes that are 4,000, 3,000 square feet, and there's only them and their spouse living it, sometimes them alone. The way that we use resources and the way that we live decides what we want to spend our money on. And with it being so expensive to live in the Virgin Islands, I don't think that'll ever change. Upskilling and making people more valuable and changing the way we look at the way our lifestyle and changes we need to make, and also participation socially to help one another is going to be key things for us. But I like that. Finance, health, and energy.
I would say at the Fort construction, different building methodologies that could accelerate the pace to construct, the cost to construct, and I don't know if we doing enough investigation on that front, especially now with so much construction that we have now. We could be the test bed to figure out, are these building methods sustainable? Are these new types of blocks,
Two things we don't like: risk
And
in
change.
the change.
But we're so well situated for that.
We are.
Because we're smaller, we can put out pilot programs much quicker and then see if they succeed or they fail and then do something different. I mean, in the Caribbean, we know we are graying, right? We know that we could have like a CCRC or a way that you can do assisted living to a very large scale. We have land. There's ways that we can do things in different ways and help the rest of the Caribbean and be the leader. We don't have to be, that's one thing that we could export.
And the other thing is, Vision 2040.
Yes.
The surveys that went out, I'm just listening to a lot of the industries that you identified. They align. The thing is this, they're subsets of some of those major industries. So we still have to get the transportation situation set up within each of those industries, because logistically for St. John, a lot of issues is getting the materials here for them to be able to do. So the cost of living is naturally going to be higher here. So it behooves us to start thinking about, like you mentioned, different ways of doing things.
Unless you can make materials here.
Exactly. And have we investigated that?
Right.
And while the Vision 2040 is great, and I applaud the effort to study it, we should probably have smaller chunks.
Absolutely.
Visions,
the world is changing too fast.
Exactly. To have a 20-year vision, by the time we reach halfway, it's done antiquated.
Well, my teacher always told me, if you want to hit something, you're going to have to aim. And I think that's the main thing. People need to figure out where they're going, what resources they'll need to get there, and how much they're willing to sacrifice in order to make their goals. Great conversation, great week in workforce development. We got to go, but we got a little bit more for you here. Mike?
Questions.
Oh, questions.
Thank you. Yes, questions in the audience. This
We
is
got
the
carried
time
away
to
with
ask.
ourselves.
And I'll bring the microphone to you. Please, Sana.
Governor, you mentioned earlier that if you've been looking for a job for a year, that something's wrong with you. Can you expand on that? Because people may take that away that...
like you crazy?
Right. But can you dig into what you were explaining in reference to that?
So there are a lot of things that employers won't tell you. Like for me, I could look at a resume and say, this person is too expensive for me. They can't work for government salary. I'll look at your... where are you moving from? Like people from the States, like I'm a little bit skeptical if you've never been here before, because I'm not going to invest training in somebody from the States because they're liable to get up and go and move away quickly. Salary is a big thing for employers. And I always tell people, pick the place you want to work and volunteer. It could be something that you're wearing. Employers that are outward facing, like conservative people. They're like people who anybody could relate to. So if you have different color hair, or you maybe have too many piercings, tattoos, anything like that, those are things that people will click from. Now, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just telling you what employers think. They associate looks with lifestyles, and they'll figure you're unreliable. The way you dress. If you're going for a construction job and you got on a Marnie suit, this partner ain't not going to work in no concrete. You know what I'm saying? Those are little things, and it may be in your interviewing. You think people know how to interview. I sent a guy for an interview one time. My friend called me back. He said, "You said this guy for?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He said he going to the States. He only want to work for 3 months. I was like, "He said that?" People don't think. Employers interview a lot of people. Excessive jewelry, long bad word nails, long fingernails. Like if you're going to something that's administrative or clerical, people say you click. That's too much of a distraction. You can't. They figure you're not going to be doing that if you be spending too much time doing on your nails. Try to dress a little bit more conservatively. Be there early. Follow up. The next person is following up. They had the interview last week. They're going to call. Be like, I had that interview last week. It went really well. Follow up with an email after you come out of the interview. Great conversation, Ms. Jones. Really excited about your company. People don't care about your problems. If you don't tell your employer your problems, they don't really care. If you mention things casually, like you have a sick kid or a sick mother or something like that, all they're hearing is this person ain't going to be to work because they're going to be taking care of their mother. Tell them what you could do for them. People always say, well, I want a job with this, and I want a job with this. How do you make me make money? How are you of value to this company? So when you go into the employees, you got to research. Like you're gonna work someplace you don't know anything about the place. I mean, you don't know how was it founded? What is the main thing that they do? What is the outlook of them? The other thing I tell people is follow the news, right? Follow the money. Where is the money? I said $850 million in education contracts by the end of this year. Who got those contracts? Where is money being awarded? Education got training programs, money for training programs, 160 million or something crazy. If you're a trainer, you need to be calling the Department of Education and finding out how do I get access to that training fund. Partner. I think that's the worst thing about us. We always want to start a new thing. Like partner with people, or go and volunteer. You'd be surprised who's in your church that is an employer, is in a position. But you don't know that unless you really pay attention. And employers are always looking for good people. Your last employer is very important too. In the Virgin Islands, people don't call references too much. But like me, if you apply for me, somebody, I'll call if I see you work via, I say like, Ayofa, Karen, oh yeah. Karen who? Karen Dunlap. Oh. You're always on your interview, and you live in a small community. I tell people all the time, you and Kmart got an attitude because the cashier moving slow and you cussing. But the person you're going to interview with next week is in the line too, watching you like, what is her problem? So you think you're being cute, right? I have a saying, beware of the toes you step on today because it might be connected to the butt you have to kiss tomorrow. In the Virgin Islands, make your enemies worth it. It's a small community. And professionals talk because it's so hard to get rid of bad employees. You could tell by how much of them walk in. You laugh, right? But I mean, employers will put up with horrible employees. Like, at least it'll come. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, you have to, it's a lot of effort when employers are not in the training business. Like, I opened my business to make money off of pouring concrete. I had a time for you and your issues, Is a grace period, but it really is not. You're supposed to be there at 8. Lunch starts at 12, ends at 1. Those are some of the kind of things you need to, because people say too much. You talk and then people are listening. They're studying your lifestyle. They're looking at your Facebook page.
And I just wanted to add that there's services at the Department of Labor between us and Equis to make sure that you need to look at your resume, because some people really write essays and they don't tell a cohesive story. And we talk about the gaps so their resume writing to make sure that it's in place, interviewing skills. So there's a lot of things that we can do to help prepare you for that. Just to make sure, it's not that you're unsure, but just to make sure double check, the extra friend, one of the 5 friends or the buddies that the governor had. Mine was like, what's up, guy? You got to be kidding. That my friends are the ones that you got to be kidding.
Don't send your resume in Word.
No.
Word shifts your resume all over the place when I employ. I done with I don't care that you worked at 20 places. What can you do? What skills do you have? I would never forget that. My daughter was like 8 years old. She was passing me, and she had a resume out. She's like, you love cooking. Big deal. How does that help me? You know what I'm saying? Don't list your hobbies on your resume. People want serious people who are about the work. Some people put their picture. I wouldn't recommend that either. It just creates biases and all that floral fancy stuff. Serious people ain't care about that. They want to know, like, what can you offer? What are your accomplishments? What have you done? I was working at VIA for 10 years. I keep saying VIA like they pay me for this commercial.
They are a sponsor.
Yeah, VIA is our sponsor. You worked at VIA at Friend. I reduced the overtime of my work crew by 20% over 3 years. I came in under budget every year I worked there. I upgraded their gasoline system and saved the company $10 million. That's what people want to know. When I read that, I'm like, I want to meet this person,
One of the things you've talked about, Commissioner Molloy, in the last couple of summits we've been to on St. Thomas and St. Croix was the low unemployment rate here in the territory. How has that impacted employers and how they seek candidates today in the territory? What kind of feedback are you getting in the department?
Well, it's a job seekers market. And so a lot of the employers are saying, even in one session, that one employer got up and made it clear that we assisted, did everything right, came to the Department of Labor, we held a job fair or we call it a hiring opportunity for them. And what ended up happening, we sourced 20 individuals. Of the 20 individuals, he was able to hire 5. And of the 5, by the time it came to start the work, 4 came. And then within the first week, he was down to 1. So, and it's not necessarily anything that he was doing in his environment, but they got other offers because it's a competitive scene out there. So, we're just asking, the competition is real, but we want to make sure that you do the investigations before you do that, because once you accept the jobs, then, the reputation is that you're not showing up, that's going to follow you.
The other thing I want to tell people is a tactic that works two tactics. The first one is apply for a job under what you think you should get, right? And just give the employer an opportunity to interview you and see how you do. I've interviewed people for jobs, and I'd be like, I definitely can't afford you, but I kept them in my mind for something else I had. I interviewed people for a job and say, this job doesn't work for you, but I have this job that you would be good in, and I want you to come in and apply for this. The other thing you need to do, if you've been looking for a job for a long while, say, tell employers straight out, I know you're concerned about the salary, but salary is not the most important thing. I had an employer stall me out for like 90 days, like 3 months, and I called back and I was like, what's the problem? They were like, we can't afford you. I said, don't worry about the salary. I just want to get on. The way the job market is today, I guarantee you, if you're worth your weight in salt, you're going to move fast. Because you move to the top because there's nobody in the way. I mean, you're just so desperate. I mean, the way that my good friend characterizes it is when you're a kid and you're picking teams, like you're picking teams for kickball or whatever, I got you, and then you pick an interview. The only person left is a boy with an asthma pump. Okay, it's so bad, but that's the reality of it. It is really bad. So, it's not going to stay like this. Employers are willing to invest time and money in people, but it's going to change soon. Right. Soon, like I was just talking to a friend, they had a layoff. They hadn't had a layoff in a while in the States, and you got to realize when it starts happening, slowly but surely, you're going to just turn around. And we're going to, because money's expensive now. It's 28% on your credit card. You need to check it. Right. I didn't think mine was. I checked it. It was like, it's crazy. Don't pay off everything in the first month.
The other thing to talk about is job quality. So what we're seeing also is that employers are doing different things. So maybe you're not going to offer the salary, as the governor said, but maybe you're going to offer them more time. Maybe we're going to have unlimited PTO. Maybe we're going to have staggered hours so they can take care of a sick child or an ailing parent. So they're being more creative to have better quality. The healthcare is different. They're offering different perks to keep people on the job and to continue to have that retention.
But to that point, and this is more of a question for you guys, the professionals, right? Are there any programs that employers can recommend to employees that may not be making enough to then supplement their lifestyle? Because the worst thing you could do is not have a job, then get a job, and then you're almost worse off than when you wasn't working because you ain't making enough to actually live. You're probably even spending more now, getting up every day, going to work. So how do these employers connect these employees who they ain't getting paid enough to live above water, but may have other programs out there that they could connect with and supplement just living?
And that's perfect to why we're discussing workforce development and what we do between Vital and Equus, because when you talk about work-based learning, we have our customized training options, we have our apprenticeship options that go in there where you're employed and you're learning, you're being trained, and you're training with upward mobility in mind.
So especially the apprenticeship option is key. But for employers, again, that incumbent worker training or customized training are very good options that we have as a part of the work-based learning continuum.
In addition to that, I believe it's the Department of Housing Authority. They have a program, financial program, to help you monitor how you spend your money. So as the governor mentioned, if you don't know that you're paying 28%, you may be paying for the item 2 or 3 times. So one of the things that they do is teaching you is how to manage your money better, and then you can stretch your paycheck.
I think the biggest one too is a couple of secrets, and there might be timed out on this one. One is, no matter when you graduated from a public high school from a high school in the Virgin Islands, you could go to the university for free.
Yes.
UVI Cell has great programs there. Labor subsidizes a lot of training, and they have a lot of free online training that you can access yourself to. There used to be, I don't know if it changed, if you're collecting unemployment, you could collect unemployment and start your own business and still qualify. Really? Yeah. I mean, we are looking at programs too, and we constantly look for this, is how we can allow people to start to figure out a way not to let all their benefits go away, their food stamp, child support, whatever, when you start to work. And what we're doing as a government too is we're trying to put your kids in school earlier, expanded Head Start, pre-K now in most of our schools. So you're not only the point that your kid is being able to be educated earlier, but now you have childcare during the day so you can get to work. And the Department of Labor also has coding opportunities, training where you work remotely. So those opportunities are available for people who don't want to work from home. You guys, do you have any programs where you supply equipment, like if you need a computer or anything to do that?
It all depends on the program, and again, through the Workforce Development Board, if that provider, that eligible training provider is on the list, depending on what the coursework is, and it requires the equipment, then it's provided.
The other thing, when you're talking about energy, we have a lot of solar programs coming on. And you talk to the people who are doing solar, they don't have the workforce for it to do, because right now we're giving 1% loans on personal solar for your house. We have at least 4 different solar grids being built. The refinery is thinking about building one. In a couple of other places are building one. And more people are going to have solar on their homes. So it's a good business if you want to get into, I was going to say young, but it doesn't matter. You want to get into PVs. We're about to install somewhere like 50 to 75 stations for charging your electric vehicles around the territory. There's also going to be some other grant programs that come along called Solar for Everybody that we're applying for. So listening to the news, sometimes when you listen to the news, don't listen for only bad news. Listen for opportunity and translate those grant monies and those fundings into opportunities for yourself.
Because we're working with Department of Energy, the Energy Office as well, partnering to make sure that they're going after a very large grant. And in addition to that, we've worked with them before in conjunction with St. Croix Foundation and making sure that they go through the NCCR, the electrical 1, 2, 3, some went as far as 4, and then they had certain projects within the community that they had to design the solar grid for.
And transportation is another one that you guys are high on,
Yes,
right?
yes.
A quick question for you guys again. So these are a lot of different programs that benefit Virgin Islanders, right? But what door do I walk through to get all these things? It should be one, exactly, it should be one door to get these things, or any door I walk through should be the right door, right? So one door or any door in the government to get access to these different programs.
So the way the public workforce system operates is that the America's Job Centers are located in both the Department of Labor offices, St. Croix and St. Thomas, and you should be coming through the employment services arena. That's our WACNAPISA funding, where you're coming, you're looking for work, you're looking for training.
That's in the Department of Labor.
Yes, in the Department of Labor. So whether you're adult, a dislocated worker, or youth, you come through the door. What happens at that point, then you are then guided to whether you're to a dislocated worker program, adult program.
Tell them what a dislocated worker is.
Dislocated worker, if you have
Labor Commissioner test.
former labor commissioner. You're displaced from your job. You were working in a particular industry. That the industry has had some layoffs, and now you are trying to upskill to move to another industry. And so, based on that definition, there's
Or you've been out of the workforce for a long time. You got pregnant. You were raising your kids. You had a career change. So you're a homemaker. Those people qualify as well too.
right under the new statute, and so you come through that door. There's separate pockets of funding that's available. Equus is the project manager for our adult and dislocated worker funding, and then our director Sebastian is the person that executes the youth and apprenticeship funding.
What's a dollar figure available to people for training under those programs?
The Workforce Development Board set that cap, and that cap has been increased to over the 8,000 because of the
Annually.
apprenticeship.
Is that annually, or how does it work?
Yeah, it used to be at 3,800.
Yeah, I remember.
And then it was raised depending on any individual, and we're trying to do a shameless plug to get more providers or more sponsors in the apprenticeship program. If you are a part of the registered apprenticeship program, you are automatically placed on the eligible training providers listing, and then there's an increase where that you can get up to $8,000.
So people, if you're not working right now and you're out there, you got like $8,000 in training sitting there waiting for you. I was talking to somebody the other day. They were like, "Yeah, I was unemployed. I'm looking for a job, but I didn't want to bother the people at unemployment insurance." Huh? Go out there and get your money. There's all this free money out here. There's rental assistance, mortgage assistance, there's light assistance, there's training money, there's assistance for if you got daycare or child care centers, assistance for that. I mean, it is like, for the last 2 years, it's been raining free money. It gonna stop. Look like the sun coming out just now. Well, we gotta go. We've just about out of time, but it's been great speaking with you on the panel. So much information. Ladies and gentlemen, people call me about information all the time, and I tell them, it's on the internet. It's right there. Just go to the website. Our departments do a good job of getting information out. Facebook, you could go on any department's Facebook. Plenty of information about what is going on. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, Governor. Audience, thank Governor Bryan once again, Commissioner Molloy, Chairman Carty, and ACLC Christian-Hendrickson.